Hey guys, welcome to the In the Game Room podcast. This episode was recorded last weekend at the Orcon convention in Los Angeles. This was made as an audio podcast only, but I did set up a camera mainly just to capture a second audio input in case something went wrong with the first audio input. So I do have some video from the interview. Unfortunately, my camera has a weird thing where it records 30 minutes of video at a time and then just stops. So 30 minutes into this 1 hour interview, the video will just stop and it'll be a static frame for the rest of the video. But this is something you're not going to sit and watch anyways. It's just something to listen to. So I thought I'd throw it up here on YouTube in case you don't subscribe to the SoundCloud or iTunes version of the audio podcast. You can just get it here and sit back and listen. I'm going to talk to Jim and Mike from Strategicon, and we're going to start off talking about the convention itself, and then we're going to get off into all kinds of other stuff, gaming related, of course. So hope you enjoy it. Thanks a lot for watching/listening, and we'll see you guys on the other side. Hi guys, welcome to the In the Game Room podcast, episode number 22. This weekend I am at the Orcon convention in Los Angeles, and I am here today with two of the Strategicon guys, Mike and Jim. Say hi guys.
Hello.
Hello.
Tell us, what is Strategicon?
Strategicon is an organization that runs 3 yearly conventions, Orcon, GameX, and Gateway, during President's Day, Memorial Day, and Labor Day. We are focused as a full gaming convention. It's not like sort of like one of those pop culture nerd conventions. This is legitimately a full gaming convention where you can come here, play board games, role-playing games, miniatures games, live action games, video games, collectible games, war games. Just about any type of game that you can possibly think of is at least somewhat represented here.
Even party games, the one department he actually missed.
Party games, which is social deduction style games, but
Say miniatures games again.
Miniatures games, which are primarily the most awesome, except for RPGs, which are actually the most awesome. If you haven't guessed yet, I run RPGs. Mike runs miniatures. And we're an organization of volunteers.
Here comes one now.
For gamers, by gamers, this is sort of like the second iteration of Strategicon, in that back in the day there was a collective of attendees that ended up purchasing the convention from the previous owners because we thought that, well, they thought they could do a better job of running it, and frankly, the success story speaks for itself at that point.
Now this particular con, Orcon, for me goes back to like 1981. Was it Strategicon then?
Nope.
No. The three independent cons actually were independent cons.
Orcon specifically was named after Orange County Convention, which was originally an HMGS, Historical Miniatures Gaming Society convention, set in Orange County, Anaheim, I think was the first couple.
Anaheim Sheridan, which was kind of cool because that was like the heyday of Dungeons and Dragons, and that hotel looked like a castle, so it kind of fit. It was kind of cool.
That is very cool.
Yeah.
Wow, live action. Little cosplay before cosplay was a thing.
Yeah, we have a dungeon here too, but it's way different. So what we do is we run these 4-day conventions. They run over a 3-day weekend. They start on Friday, go Saturday, Sunday, and Monday. One of the cool things about this convention is that it's a 24-hour convention, and once it starts on Friday, it pretty much keeps on trucking until it ends on Monday. So if you care to lose a lot of sleep while gaming, this is sort of the best place to do it.
There was a certain rite of passage when we were younger that involved nonstop gaming, Jolt Colas, and sleeping is wherever you possibly could without the hotel staff kicking you out.
Yep.
That's a game in and of itself, too.
Yeah.
When this was at, I guess it was the Sheridan down the road, a long time ago, I played a Micro Armor tournament there. Not a tournament, just a big game.
Right.
And we played all weekend. And we'd run to the bar and get a Long Island iced tea, come back, play, and when that was empty, we'd go get another one. And we did this for 4 days, and that was back when I was young enough that could actually happen.
Yeah, I hear that.
Yeah, that's the problem. Is your liver hates you now, probably. But
Well, getting old sucks, but
Yeah.
whatever.
It's all good.
But Mike and I, Mike, before I really became involved with convention, actually used to run tournaments back in the day. This was in the 90s.
yeah, mid to late 90s.
Mid to late 90s. And was generally treated poorly.
There was a large schism between the historical guys. At 40K was up and coming, and I just wasn't part of the in crowd, unfortunately.
You were more on the 40K side at the time?
That was what I played because
Yeah.
my local game store was not really a game store. It was more. I mean, to this day they still exist, and they're primarily hobbies: RC cars, model kits, rockets. They make a lot of their own stuff. They happen to have games at it.
It's got to be Pegasus.
That was Pegasus.
Yeah.
And they've got a much more well-defined game area now, but back then it was kind of a second thought. But a lot of the guys there, they liked having it there because they played.
Yeah, and they can get stuff at a huge discount.
Which, look, enlightened self-interest is a wonderful thing.
It is. But he was working at that point, and I was actually going to the convention also during that time, playing role-playing games. But the severe lack of events and the amount of events that would cancel even when you signed up, it caused me to really lose faith in the con and just stop coming, because I would keep coming just to get disappointed at least 2 or 3 times.
Right.
About events. So, it was just kind of sad. So I went, this place is falling apart. It's just not for me. I'm just going to go to my local game store and I'm just going to game with my friends. Years and years later, this was like early aughts when we got together with John, or 20, when we started Special Projects. I don't
Oh,
remember.
geez, that had to be, well, it was more than 10 years ago.
I want to say 2002, 2003.
No. It was because we've only been in charge, or the current ownership have only been have it for a little more than 10 years. I've been married for almost 12. So I want to say we weren't coming when I lived in Newport, so it had to be 2008.
2008. Okay. Yeah. Well, around that time, our friend John Paiva, who runs the ITC tournaments here now.
Yep. More 40K.
Yeah.
Sorry, historical people.
Boo.
Whatevs. But he was a member of the convention staff and wanted to create a organization within the convention that ran games pointedly that you could not run at home. Either completely upscaled games or games that required a lot of gear or something to do that would make it difficult for you to run on your own. So it would be sort of like an attraction to the convention. You couldn't play it anywhere other than at the convention. One of the main things that we did was we actually did General Quarters, which is a World War II naval simulator. What's the original scale? 1/1000th? What?
It's no, the original scale is 1/2400.
1/2400. But we actually ran the actual scale models, the plastic Tamiya scale model size.
1/600.
1/600. Sewed a whole bunch of blue sheets together and covered a whole lot of floor space.
In most cases was 40 by 40.
40 by 40, and ran games of General Quarters at that scale. Which was very eye-catching. We had like the big painted ships and all that stuff, and it was really cool. We also did stuff like Mustangs and Messerschmitts. If you're not familiar with that game, it's a World War II aerial simulator.
Hyper realistic.
Hyper realistic. In that it's like it takes 3 turns to actually do a certain maneuvers, like an Emmelman where you just flip over back and go the other direction. And there were very specific rules about how these maneuvers had to go, where you actually had to turn the ship on all 360 degrees to represent where it's facing, because that actually matters for shooting and stuff like that. So hyper realistic, but we did it with the big planes. We also did it with the model planes on these gigantic stands.
I remember seeing that.
We played around with our own sort of like physics-based space combat system that used thrust and counter thrust. And we did that a couple of times. We also did a whole bunch of like small demos of games, be it like things like Malifaux, things like
Wings of War.
Wings of War.
I remember when John was running his Wild West game, and he came dressed up as the governor from Rock Ridge.
From Blazing Saddles.
Blazing Saddles. Actually, it was Rock Ridge. It was the Battle of Rock Ridge.
Yeah,
and,
that's something you just don't do at home. Or I guess you do, but you're weird if you do.
But he had the whole town of Rock Ridge meticulously represented, and everybody, and he used a version of Warhammer that did Wild West stuff.
Yeah, Legends of the Old West.
Legends of the Old West, and it just had a great old time with it, And he would, like I said, dressed up as the governor from the movie and really play up the sort of like RP aspect of it, and it was just a really great event. So we did that for quite a few years. And then it started coming around where, staff changes started happening, and we've been there for a while, and we were familiar with the organization and willing to help out. So, long story short, Mike and I first Mike and then myself become department heads. We like to say that we sort of failed upward. And started just running the departments. And the thing about it is that we were a little bit younger than the rest of the crew that was running things at the time.
Oh yeah.
And we had, I'm gonna say, a fresher perspective on some things, and really had some ideas of things that we wanted to change and do.
That can be good, bringing some fresh ideas in.
Yeah, I'm a big fan. Exactly. The thing is, it's easy to get burnt out in these positions because. Outside of watching people enjoy themselves and getting the warm and fuzzies of that there's no real pay. What we get is a free badge in a room, and that's
T-shirt
and a T-shirt,
an occasional cheese platter,
Some of us do,
if you're high enough up the scale there. But really, it's very easy to burn out on this stuff because it just, after a point, it can really become a chore because it's just repetitive.
It's a lot of work.
And it's a lot of work. So we came in as sort of fresh blood on the situation. We're obviously a lot more energetic about doing it just because it was new to us. We wanted to really succeed. We had something to prove. And so Mike came in there, and there were maybe 30 to.
I think the last year it wasn't me. There was 32 or 33 miniatures events, 16 of which was essentially the special projects that had been co-opted to save miniatures.
Right, which is basically us running games.
Yeah. Just trying to build up interest in it.
How many events did you have this con?
102. Nice. Scheduled, and the pickup ones.
Right.
Who knows?
Exactly.
Mine didn't count in there.
No, it didn't, but it was one of the most fun. Well, one of the few I got to play and be.
Yeah.
But then again, bolt action is awesome.
Yeah. Yeah.
It was good.
Yay, historicals. So
So this convention is probably the biggest you had. Numbers.
We already know that already, and that's not counting most of today or tomorrow, which.
We get some stragglers in. It's not a huge number, but we do get some people in on a random Monday, just because it's the holiday day and some people just walk in. And
Actually, the big draw on Monday, auction.
Yeah.
We get 20 just for the auction.
So it's one of those things where it's sort of a validation of the idea that if you attack something that's a passion project and you are really committed to the community and you're really committed to your hobby. And making sure that other people enjoy that hobby and spreading that hobby out, you're going to have sort of like that bears success. It comes from a point. It comes from a place of sincerity and integrity, I think, which is really why I love this organization so much. And then I'm not going to say it's perfect, but for the most part, that it's a group of people that sincerely want to make this thing the best that we can possibly make it. There may be discussions about different opinions as to how to go about that, but really down to it, everybody here is really committed to make sure that this convention is as pleasant and entertaining for as many people as we can possibly make it.
It is about the community here, and from the beginning it has been. That was when our buddy John kind of got us involved with it. I admit I was done with the convention from before. But it's like, oh no, they're not in it they're not getting any profit out of it.
Yeah, nobody's making any money off this con.
And the feeling that I get when I'm here, and maybe it's just because this is my home con. I've been coming here forever, but I always get that like family feeling. There's a lot of other conventions where a lot of people from one group don't talk to another group, and they're really competitive, and they're really ultra serious about whatever stupid game they're playing, and they're in their cliques and whatnot, and I don't see that here. I see even people that play games that I don't care about, I can strike up a conversation with them and find out, they're just good, cool, decent people.
Yeah. You just got, and then there's some people you just pull aside and you go, hey, it's okay to let somebody else like something. Just because you don't like it, it's fine. They can like it. It's okay.
But I think a lot of that is I guess reflected in the community as a whole.
Right.
More and more often, there's fewer people who self-identify as, I'm only a miniatures player, or I'm only a role player. This, especially with how easy it is to just pick up a board game. Hey, that was kind of fun. You like that? Here's a bunch of stuff like it, and they're easy and they're fast, and you can play them. And
yeah, I mean, it's kind of crazy because I know Mike and I are avid gamers. I mean, we play board games. We'll play card games. Hey, man, we played cribbage for hours and hours and hours on end. Just basic cribbage, hearts, spades. But we like board games, card games, miniatures games. I mean, Mike and I are avid miniatures collectors and hobbyists, and I love role playing. It's a passion for me. It makes me truly, truly happy. It's one of those things where one of the things that makes me the most happy is taking something that's absolutely nothing other than like a sheet of paper and some basic numbers and words and making something completely cool out of it, like an entire story, an entire world, an entire epic. Making something from nothing is nothing makes me happier than making something from nothing. And role playing is, in essence, is just raw creativity. So that's the reason why I think I was a great fit for an RPGs director, because I love those things so much, and I love the people that love them so much, and I want them to have that experience as much as possible.
Do you have any kind of idea how many people that attend this, or what percentage of the people that attend this are into role playing?
I can tell you just straight off of the raw numbers, I have about 500 individual badge numbers that sign up for games throughout a given weekend at a 2,000 person attendance. So, and that's not including Adventurers League and Pathfinder.
Yeah, that's the thing is, so collectively as a whole, the role playing community here, there's 3, I guess, subgenres of it.
Well, there's 2 subgenres and 2 organizations and 1 subgenre.
Well, yeah.
What it is that my department is sort of a catch-all department. Anything that's technically a role-playing game can come to my department. Pathfinder Society and Adventurers League are actually proprietary organizations from Paizo, who makes Pathfinder, and Wizards of the Coast that make Dungeons and Dragons, and that's their organized play. And they have a huge following, because the cool thing about organized play is that you can go to a game store that runs Pathfinder or Adventurers League events, bring a character, go through an adventure. You get all the credit for going to that adventure, the experience, the money, the equipment. All of that's tallied by the organization to validate that it is, and you can take that same character to Colorado, play in another Adventure League game, and it's just as valid. So it's one of those things where, a lot of people that may not have a solid gamer group that meets regularly but still wants to role play, a lot of people will just go to these Adventurers League or Pathfinder Society events and just find pickup games. And
they're huge at the local stores.
And so we host those things, and not only do we host those things like a normal game store would, but we have epic events. The manufacturers will actually create content straight for conventions and for larger conventions, and our attendance has been so outstanding for both of those organizations that we've actually had premieres of things for, like, the new Starfinder, the science fiction version of Pathfinder had one of its premieres here.
Yep.
At Strategicon. It had its West Coast premiere. So, it's one of those things where the people that play that intensely and sort of just do that. So you never really see a lot of that energy unless you go down to those rooms where you're actually, but those places are
dungeon.
Saturday was the Adventurers League Epic event. They play, it's 1 GM and 6 players per table. They had 36 tables that all play the same game at the same time in their big epic event.
Yeah, and they're all in the same world at the same time. So there is a possibility of interaction. It's huge. So and those kind of unique events, once again, like special projects, only things that you can find at a convention like this. You'll never really see something like that outside of this type of event.
Yeah, I can't fit 200 people in my house, although it feels like that when the in-laws come over.
Yeah.
Yeah, I remember when I first started going to Orcon, it was, I don't know what the percentages were then, but if I had to guess, I would say it was like 80% D&D. And then there was the weirdos with the miniatures playing 6mm modern wargaming with me.
Right.
You know, we were the weirdos. So it's I'm glad to see that miniatures is growing here a lot.
That makes two of us. I was so scared. I was scared shitless when I took the job over.
I remember
I had
you
confidence.
kept begging me every con, come to the next con and bring your boards and bring your micro armor and stuff.
Well, now, to be fair, there's a reason for that. Is because now, yes, miniatures-wise, I started with 40K, eventually got into historicals, and I've actually now have a huge interest in micro armor specifically. In fact, I've bought some from you.
Right.
Because I like Team Yankee kind of spurred me into I guess fulfilling, because I grew up during the Cold War, and my dad was a Marine. I was militarized.
Well, just so everybody knows, Team Yankee is a miniatures game based on the idea of a Cold War gone hot.
Yeah.
So in the vein of Red Storm Rising, and also the titular
Team Yankee novel.
Just like right in the early 80s, I think.
Yeah.
Which is funny because that's the time I was in the Army.
But you get all of this. There was a certain point, especially during the 80s, where military hardware there was a fetish for it. I mean, all the stuff from G.I. Joe that was basically just reinterpreted American military hardware.
Yeah.
So kids like us that grew up during that time period, you look at, oh my God, that's an A-10, that's awesome. Oh my God, it's a Harrier jump jet, that's great. And all those things are in that game. So
there was so much new stuff coming out too. I mean, the M1, the M2, the Humvee. Mm-hmm. These were like the newest, coolest things. Everything else was 40 years old.
Yeah, a whole new generation of stuff.
But yeah, it's a really neat game. But anyways, I'm sorry to interrupt.
Oh no, and just so I went from the Team Yankee 15mm to wanting to maybe a little more realistic scale wise, and some more stuff. So I've gone with some more flexibility as well. So I've kind of gone to that micro armor because you know what, if 40K taught me one thing, it's that these games are entertaining. But at the 40K scale, a tank takes up like a third of the table. Yeah. I started playing moderns in 20mm. All of a sudden, I can get 3 city blocks on a table. 15, you get a little more. 6, well, and then Alan one time brought this amazing board that was the Iraqi parade grounds.
The Baghdad parade grounds.
Yeah, that was awesome.
In 285th scale from satellite pictures, it was accurate.
And played that, I think, the 2 or 3 times you brought it. Loved every single time of it because, it was representative of the ranges, and it was just it's like, oh, now these are companies of tanks. Awesome. Right. Which is how we would, actually fight nowadays.
You didn't get that parking lot effect that you get in Team Yankee at 15mm.
Well, yeah, but isn't that one of the great things about the con too? Is that even if you already have familiarity with games or certain games, you can come over here and find a whole new series of different options for yourself. And one of the things that I pride in the RPGs department is I had 120 events scheduled, and with 50 different systems. Independent systems being those games. So, it's like every other game is a different system. So it's one of those things where I like to foster people coming over here and being experimental, trying new things, and having as broad a selection of different types of games for people to play so they can experience new things. And the miniatures department right now is exactly that. I mean, there are so... Watching Mike and Tim just go into Kickstarters was just amazing. I found this new game.
Oh, Kickstarter.
$500 later.
Don't even get me on that topic. That's where this goes to our rating.
Yeah, but still, it's just, I I actually have bolt action stuff myself. I didn't fall down the Team Yankee rabbit hole.
You didn't need to.
But I didn't need to because you guys literally had every single tank that they sold in Southern California purchased. You actually they cleared out stores of product all the way from freaking Colorado, Wyoming, all the way to California.
Oh yeah, let's see. It was West Texas, California. It wasn't any Nevada, Oregon, Washington, and Arizona, Colorado. Yeah, pretty much.
So it's.
Hey, we had a game to run, damn it.
Yeah, you had this gigantic table filled with nothing but American and Russian tanks. It was a sight to behold. But once you guys went that deep in, it says, I'm not buying crap because they've bought it all.
They've got it all.
And I'm good. But now that Mike's thinking about doing the same game in a smaller scale, I'm kind of on board with that too, because I've been actually very curious about playing things at smaller scales.
There's a huge community online, especially on Facebook. There's a group called Team Yankee and 6mm, and there's a lot of guys that are playing it in 6mm, and they don't change a thing. Mm-hmm. All the ranges, all the distances, everything stays the same, and it just looks right.
Yeah, it honestly makes a lot more sense.
Yeah.
And it's a pretty solid rule set.
No, it's a great rule set, but it's just maneuvering and getting all that stuff on the table. You'd have to play basically skirmish games to make it make sense. If you wanted to play anything larger scale, it just didn't work.
Yeah, some of the games I've seen played in 15mm, you've got 3 hinds lined up, and the rotor blades are overlapping each other because they have to be so close together,
Right.
or whatever whatever the rule is. It just begins to look a little silly. But if you put a 6mm miniature in that place, then it starts to look like, oh, you got 2 or 3 helicopters spread out.
The only problem I have with the move to 6mm in Team Yankee is the fact that I had already researched an Airwolf in the correct scale, and I really wanted to run a scenario where the Russians had to try to kill Airwolf.
I bet somebody makes it in 6mm. I think it's just a Bell 222.
It's just a Bell 222, yeah.
Yeah.
That's all it is.
I'm sure you can get one. Probably one of the British companies, H&R,
QRF maybe?
Brooks and Ross, or one of those guys.
Well, because they make everything. I mean, that's the same thing when I was playing 20mm moderns through Force on Force. Everything I got was I can't remember the guy's name off the top of my head, but it's all British stuff.
Yeah.
It's like, and they had everything. It's like, well, do you want early 2000 U.S. Army, late 2000 U.S. Army, in mop suits, not in mop suits. Well, now we got the Marines that are different, or you want the British, or take your pick. They had it all.
Well, that's the thing I think that historicals have over fantasy-style games, in the fact that historicals offer such a broad selection of different things, manufacturers of figures, time periods,
the kind of
play
stuff
style.
The kind of stuff that appeals to somebody like me who's going to research it to death.
Yeah, for people, I mean, actually from a role player point of view, I like to give character to everything that I do. So, but when you're doing historicals, there's research you can do. There's real life things that you could tap into that just make it really a lot more interesting and intriguing for me personally. Although I love making my own stuff up, it's really kind of cool to be able to just step back in time and go, well, this was Charlie Company, and these are the battles that they fought in, and the things that they did, and you get to go and find out more about the world in general. So it's somewhat educational. There's an educational factor to historical games.
Oh, yeah, it's like when I started playing Bolt Action, and I decided we were doing a North Africa campaign. Well, you know what? British Indians would be awesome. And I found out where they fought, what they had, all the gear, and all that kind of stuff. I literally found 2 books about just the Gurkhas in action in North Africa.
Yeah, I read an entire book just on the French Foreign Legion because that's what I wanted to do. But the thing about it is that I want to do French Foreign Legion because I'm Hispanic. My mother is from Spain. And I wanted to play Spanish dudes in World War II, but as everybody knows, the Spanish really didn't do much in World War II. But you know who did? A bunch of the guys who basically fled Francisco Franco and joined the French Foreign Legion. Actually, a huge number of French Foreign Legions at that point in time were Spanish. So I figured this is my best option, to be able to play Spanish, and I wanted to play a French army that had only one Frenchman in it.
Yeah,
Oddly enough, my British are the same way.
I'm learning a lot about World War II history. See, most everybody that starts playing miniatures starts playing World War II.
Mm-hmm.
I was the opposite. Back in 1981 or whenever it was, I discovered it was 81 because that's when TAC Force came out. TAC Force was 285th scale modern wargaming, whatever modern was at that time.
Right.
It was M60A3s. That's the game that I latched onto, and I've stuck with it for 30-something years, always playing the most modern stuff. So I didn't really care too much about World War II.
The very first historical game I played was Johnny Rep.
So now that I've started playing Bolt Action, I'm actually learning a lot more and realizing how little I know. And it's kind of fun. I mean, I'll never be one of those rivet counters that sits around all day talking about, the different versions of this and that and why one's better than the other. I'll just be talking about, how it affects the game.
Yeah.
But I am learning a lot about it. It's kind of cool.
It's super cool. And, it actually, Bolt Action is just an incredibly entertaining game in that I love the way that the game flows because of its initiative system. And I love the fact that really every single soldier is pretty much exactly the same with just a couple slight variations.
Right.
And to me, that's absolutely fair. You know what I'm saying? When you're dealing with 40K or a fantasy-based thing,
yeah.
there are so many drastic variables because every single unit is radically different from any other, different stat lines, different everything. In Bolt Action, a dude is a dude is a dude.
Yeah, a dude with a rifle is a dude with a rifle.
Exactly.
Whatever uniform he's wearing, it doesn't really.
The only thing that matters is what they're carrying, really. And
Well, a little bit for the experience. Are you new dude or are you old dude?
Yeah, but the thing is that
But that's it. Those are differences.
Yeah, that's it.
Whereas in 40K, you can literally have my soldier is worth 5 of yours and can kill him and 15 of his friends before you guys even knew I was there.
Yeah. There's a surprisingly large number of ex-40K players that play Bolt Action. It's really funny. I get into the Bolt Action groups on Facebook, and every once in a while there'll be, not every once in a while, once a day or so, there'll be somebody that says, "Hi, I'm just a recent convert from 40K. I'm really loving this game. It's so much better or different or whatever."
Well, I think one of the big reasons for that, honestly, is the fact that, because, full disclosure, this will piss off the historical guys, 40K from the beginning. I played Rogue Trader, 2nd, 3rd, 4th, all the way up through 40K, and at times the game was full of flavor and full of stuff and full of fluff and all kinds of really cool game effects, but that tended to bog the game down, and then as the game got faster, more accessible, and streamlined, it sucked a lot of the
Flavor out of it, yeah.
Yeah,
The
flavor,
romance.
the differences. It all just kind of felt like, you have your cheap but plentiful troops. You have your really high guys, and there was just small candy coatings and a couple of different things, as opposed to Bolt Action, which uses, very straightforward mechanics, but still has a massive amount of flavor because, your guy in a German helmet has these cool things that affect him because that was German and that fits their style, versus the guy who was British or the guy who was
First Airborne Division, sir. Yeah, exactly. But I think that the way that I put it is the main difference, and I'm not saying that one's better than the other. I think they're just different. Is that I think that games like Warhammer, games like War Machine, Hordes, games like Malifaux at a smaller skirmish scale are basically games that revolve around not only the playing of the game but around the meta of the game, where army builds and synergies are
it's combo. You're looking for the combo.
at least as important as your generalship on the table.
Right.
Well, the term that I hear a lot when people are talking about 40K, tell me if this is true or not, is it a pay-to-win game?
Well, here's an interesting thing. There was a YouTube channel that what they did was they instead of using point values for 40K, they would do dollar value. So they would say, okay, this is a $500 game.
Right, so after you got 6 figures on the table, what do you do next?
You're done.
Yeah, but the point that they were making was that the dollar value of things aligned itself very similarly to the points value of things.
So it is a bit of a pay-to-win game.
Kind of.
I'm one of the few people that's never played it, or even looked at the book, and it just didn't interest me.
Yeah, the thing about it is that I'm a huge sci-fi nerd as well, and
I am too. And I mean, I played like role-playing games like Traveler and stuff. That's really cool.
it's just the world that 40K is built on is what really drew me in. I didn't start playing 40K. I actually started playing Epic, which is the 6mm version.
It's 40K micro armor.
It's 40K micro armor. And my friend Paul had just graduated from the Merchant Marine Academy and with a degree in logistics, and he was delivering pizza at the time. Irony. And I was just out of high school and basically just sort of working for my dad and just hanging out. And there was a game store by us, and since we had a bunch of spare time, we ended up spending a lot of time there. And we each saw like these epic, and there were like the Titans and the robots and stuff, and it looked so cool. And one of the guys at the shop actually gave me the book, the rule book, to read the rules. I did not read a single rule. I read pages and pages of background story.
The fun stuff.
All the fun stuff, and I sort of, wow, there's elements of Dune in this. There's elements of Star Wars in this. There's elements of all of these Asimov. There's all these great science fiction tropes that they pulled on to create the 40K universe, and I actually just fell in love with the setting. And then we started looking at the stuff, and I played D&D for 3 years, and they had space dwarves, and dwarves were my favorite race in D&D, so I just snapped some up, and Paul picked up some Eldar, which are space elves, and
dwarves in epic scale must be pretty tiny.
They were really tiny, but luckily they had huge, big tanks.
They did. They had the cool stuff. They even had the combat zeppelin.
Yeah.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, they had gyrocopters
totally
and zeppelins.
In the year 40,000.
They were armored zeppelins with anti-grav things and heavy bolters. Then after we picked up the game and started messing around and playing, it was time to assemble and paint. And that's when the real romance started.
Yeah, that's the fun stuff.
Miniatures games are fun. I don't think they're any more fun than a board game or a role-playing game, honestly, as far as, time entertainment. But sitting down and painting those minis and then bringing out those minis and showing them off and having ownership over this army, it swells me with... It gives you pride. It gives you accomplishment. It also makes you very attached to the things that you're using for the game in a way that you really, outside of maybe a character you've been playing for a long time in a role-playing game, just doesn't exist. I am completely and totally vested.
It really keeps you invested or involved in the game in between games.
Yeah.
Like, I get to play a game maybe once a month, if I'm lucky. It's all that other time in between that I'm working on miniatures that keeps me enthused about the game.
Yeah, and honestly, one of the reasons why I didn't go into historicals sooner than I did is because the model ranges made for historicals just weren't as interesting to me to paint than the fantasy stuff. And that's pretty much it.
Well, and that was the hook that actually Pegasus used to get into me, is because I knew the store because I was a model builder.
Yeah.
And then they go, oh, look at this. So it's a model that we use in this game. And so immediately it's like, oh, that thing that I bought and did all this work on is not going to sit on the shelf and gather dust. I can actually do something with it.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, score.
I think that's common in a lot of miniatures gamers. They come from model building, model railroading, things like that, and then they say, oh, I can play with this shit too?
Well, and not even that. I remember when I worked, Jim and I actually worked at the same place a long time ago. There was one of the mechanics there who bought tons of 40K and fantasy and all that kind of stuff and never rolled a dice in his life. He just wanted to assemble and paint the stuff, and that was what he enjoyed.
That's probably going to be me with Star Wars Legion. I'm just going to buy everything and put it in a display case after I paint it. I might play.
That's perfectly fine too.
Yeah.
I mean,
that's fun stuff.
That's the thing, is there's so many facets to the miniatures hobby. That's one of the things that I really like about it, because there's a lot of different ways to enjoy it other than just playing the game.
Yeah.
And with things like 40K and they're expansive, that mean they have novelizations, they have
oh yeah.
I mean, so much content that you can consume and immerse yourself in that universe, that and then you read something and it inspires you to do something, or a conversion of a model because you wanted to look like this guy from the character from the book, or you heard some, it's transmedia at its best. They get you at every angle.
It's a wonderful, huge range of ways to draw your inspiration from. The same way that, I know when Tim and I were sitting around assembling our my first and his probably 40th or 50th bolt action army, we had on, even though the British Indians weren't in it per se or at all, we watched Band of Brothers while we were working on this stuff.
I do that with Saving Private Ryan. I was always playing in the background. Or if I'm working on modern stuff, it'll be Black Hawk Down.
Oh, that's a good one too.
Yeah.
Well, that explains your hotel.
Yeah.
Which I'm dying. I'm like, I gotta find a use for that. The problem for me is that I really want to get back into doing Force on Force because I really love that game. And now that I picked up another one of their add-on books, it's like, oh, I can do all this really cool stuff. So
I've got all the books for that game. I should give them to you.
For what?
For Force on Force.
You could. I already have them.
Oh, you?
I literally picked up the last two that I didn't have.
Screw you then.
I know. I appreciate the hell out of it, but I can only read one at a time.
Yeah, Brick Dropper.
What's the? There's one, A Day of the Rangers or something.
Day of the Rangers.
That's the Mogadishu book.
Yep, that's Mogadishu.
Or the Moog. We don't call it Mogadishu.
We were playing Force on Force back when we were over at the Sheraton, and our friend Steve was playing with us.
I think that's when I met you the first time.
Yeah, I think it's when the...
Yes, because that was where I used your buildings that I found online that Steve, who Jim's telling us, was essentially blowing up because he was really tired of getting RPGs rained upon him, so he decided just to take buildings down.
So the thing is, he figured out that it's a lot easier to destroy the building than try to kill the individual people inside the building. So he just started doing this, firing everything in the building. And I'm like, dude, you are dropping bricks, man. Brick Dropper. And he got a full-on nickname from that game. He is now Brick Dropper, that he developed into a male stripper persona that he did during John's 50th birthday. Brick Dropper.
What do you think of the Force on Force rules?
Oh, great.
I'm a huge fan of them, honestly. They were my first foray where instead of just from the outside thinking this is really new, that I actually took the leap into go, this is my thing I'm going to bring to the community. Especially because of how, to me, how unique at the time the rules were. Playing with the HMGS guys at this con in my early days of being here, I was exposed to the really cool initiative systems, because 40K is a fairly boring.
Yeah.
I go, you go. All my stuff goes, all your stuff goes, and that's fine.
Mechanically speaking, the game is actually very dull. That's why everything's focused on the meta, because that's really exciting part of the rules.
Yeah, absolutely. But in Force on Force, when I was reading through the book, it took me quite a while to really grok the... Okay, so everything on my side is going to go before anything on your side is going to go, but everything on your side that can see my stuff can react to it, and react to it constantly. And so that became one of the hurdles when I was teaching people to play the game. It was, okay, before you do anything, pick your unit and announce exactly what they're going to do, and then at the various parts where somebody can see you, the other player has the option to react. So normally, if it's not my turn in 40K, I can pee. I'm waiting for you to tell me what dice to roll, as opposed to Force on Force where you got to watch.
Yeah, you got to be there the whole time.
Because if these guys have a 2-inch window when they're crossing that driveway, you've got to technically in, waiting to turn them into Swiss cheese. You've got to be there, pay attention to that, and make that die roll, and go from there.
I made the point about miniatures games and even role-playing game systems that there's two ways of doing it. There's Rock'em Sock'em Robots, which means I'm going to stand here, I'm going to punch you, you're going to take some damage. That's your turn, and you're going to punch me, and I'm going to take some damage. And whoever actually, and then the dice are actually more involved into the result of the combat than you. I prefer miniatures games and role-playing systems that are a little bit more fluid, that are action and reaction, that actually feel more like a combat is actually going on.
Oh yeah, and they did a fantastic job of actually creating that, and the fact that the asymmetricalness of it was great too. Force on Force fits such a wide range, and I played such a narrow band of it that I never did regulars versus regulars. It was always sandbox type stuff, because that's all the stuff that I actually had although it was weird that the terrorists got Russian tanks on a surprisingly regular basis on that Fog of War deck. It was the weirdest thing ever, but so much so I actually had to buy a T-55 just to have it.
I really love the one where we had to go in and rescue the news crew.
The best part about that one was when I played it at a HMGS thing at an armory, and there was a lot of Bradleys in it. Well, they had a Bradley unit there that had served in Iraq, and they thought the game was really cool. And I was telling about the mission and that they had to save the news crew to a man. Like, oh, well, can you just shoot the news crew? To a man.
No,
which,
you can't.
No, you can't. And like, oh, well, okay. They didn't seem too heartbroken about it, but it just made the parameters way easier.
Simple problem solvers, man.
But
it cost us? Somebody's gonna have to write a letter. Fuck it.
Yeah. I can't recommend it enough. I mean, I really enjoyed it, and it was my foray into that. And then from there, it just kind of morphed because, Bolt Action is another one of those where it's a great little game, and the random draw is awesome because plans go so far, but at the same time, the use of officers in that game to mitigate that to a point. I'm activating my officer. My officer can command X number of guys to do their thing.
No, the thing is, the way the rules are structured, your officer allows you to actually implement a tactical plan. That is the ability of the officer is.
Right.
Holy fuck. How perfect is that? Exactly.
He's not just a +1 to your leadership anymore, and it's a really great way to address that.
Now, have you heard about the upcoming supplement? I think it's just going to be a PDF, but it's going to be Bolt Action, really small units, like 5 or 6 guys, and each guy gets a action dice.
Well, yeah, because the miniatures games scale up and down, where you have up like 6mm regimental style all the way down to small unit tactics, and a small skirmish game like that actually sounds really kind of interesting.
That's borderline role playing.
Absolutely,
because you got individual characters.
Absolutely.
And you can really get into playing each one.
But the thing is, you can actually legitimately use that as a role-playing game because, if you're just simulating a combat action scene, then you just use that rule set.
I think I'm going to be trying that out at Warlord Con this year.
Nice.
I was talking to John Russell. He's the event coordinator for Warlord USA, and he's going to be there. And he said, we're going to have this. And they might also have the Warlord Korea supplement.
Oh, nice.
Which could be interesting. They're working on figuring out how to get helicopters into it and things like that, and jets. So that could be interesting.
But also, was that the samurai game that?
Was it Test of Honor?
Test of Honor. That game is great, and also a great example of a game that could easily be a role-playing game.
Yeah, and it kind of is, I think.
Yeah. Because actually, one of the tropes in role-playing games is mooks, or a mook spigot, or a mook bucket, and the 3 base guys that are your basic Ashigaru just really kind of follow the whole mook concept from RPGs because they're really just popcorn. They're there to die.
They're like machine gun loaders.
Yeah, exactly.
Just there to die.
Just there.
Yeah, exactly. You're sorry, dude. You're the first one.
I just see those loaders sitting there, just lying down, just crying. I'm just here to die. Why?
Well, we've gone about 46 minutes. That might be enough, unless you got something else pressing you want to...
Not really. If you're listening to this and you're interested in gaming, come to GameX.
If you're,
coming up in May.
If you're anywhere near Southern California and you're not coming to the Strategicon conventions, well, you're just wrong.
You're missing out.
Yeah.
Seriously, you're just missing out.
President's Day, Memorial Day, Labor Day.
Yeah. Strategicon.net.
Yeah. Exactly. And not only that, but also, an amazing amount of product available in our wonderful vendor room.
Wonderful. Our vendor room is awesome. You should see that. What is it? Gamecraft Miniatures?
Gamecraft Miniatures, yeah.
They have a booth
not only is their booth well stocked and awesome, but their staff is just sexy as fuck. Just amazing.
Checked.
Just amazing.
Great with kids too.
Yeah.
Not all kids. Some of them are hated for a good reason.
But in general, man, if you're listening to this and you love games, I love you.
Yeah. And everybody that bothers to listen to this must love games because they're putting up with all our crap. So
Indeed.
it's all good. All right, then. That's it for now.
Thank you, Alan, for having us.
Thanks for coming and joining me.
Oh, we'll be back. I listen to your podcast today. I just want to go, I want to talk about this thing. And
sometimes I'm watching, I just
We can
text
do
him.
this,
Is he filming this now?
every month or so. We can do it on Skype or something.
Yeah, totally. Just
or
let
when
us
we
know.
get together at the Spoon events, maybe.
Oh, yeah. Actually, a spoon cast would be great.
Spooncast.
for those of you who don't know, so we had
Which is everybody that's listening.
well, we had one of the members of our circle of friends and our family here at the convention passed away over the summer.
Yeah, I talked about that last year on the show, actually.
And
that's Tim.
That's Tim. And during his memorial service, when we were all sitting around, we realized that we had just kind of let life get the better of us and hadn't been meeting as much as we should have. And so we came up with the idea of the Spoon, the Society for the Preservation of Odd Old Nerds. And
It's us.
Boy, to a T, as it turns out.
I'm good at making acronyms. What can I say?
And how? And so it turned into this thing where it was these.
Too. Yeah. Well, thank you, Alan. Coming from you, it's a great compliment.
I know a thing or two.
And so it just turned into this get together where it's like, oh yeah, by the way, so we're going to assemble and or play and or paint and or take your pick and
watch TV
or
TV, both
or whatever. Yeah.
And for those of you who listened a few podcasts ago, that's where Kelly's Heroes came from.
Yep.
Was at one of those events.
I was forced to watch it there, and I loved it. It was great.
Oh, it's one of my
Now,
favorite
conversely, he was also forced to listen to the Highwaymen concert that John had and did not like
I
it.
didn't like that so much.
Yeah.
No.
Well,
But he was hip to was it Bowie?
Yeah, I think so, yeah.
Yeah, so whatever.
Oh,
Yeah, it was all good. It was all good. It's always all good
it's
when
just
we get
background.
together.
But the thing is, it's just fun to get together with your buddies, even if you're not playing a game, you're just doing random stuff. It's just
And peer pressure is the best thing for painting.
yeah.
Anybody within 10 feet of you with a paintbrush in their hands kind of guilt you into doing it because it's like they've
Not only that,
gotten all
but
that work done. I could be working on my stuff.
all of your possible distractions are doing the same thing you're doing.
Yeah.
So it causes you this community of focus on it. We used to go to Tim's house like every other weekend and go in his basement, and 3 to 4 of us would get together and just start painting. I'd get
cave.
so much stuff done on those weekends just because it was just. That's what we were doing. We were sitting down and we were painting. We'd had background noise movies, but we weren't sitting there just watching it. We were just painting the entire day. And the day would go by because we'd be shooting the shit, talking about idiot crap all the time, all day long. And the day just went by. And the next thing you knew, I had an entire 2 squads of guys painted.
Yeah, 12 hours later, it's like, oh, I got all that stuff done today.
I remember the first Spoon event that I went to, and I had the new Warlord SS guys, the 40-pack or 30 or whatever comes in a pack. I had them built and base coated, and then they sat for weeks. I just didn't have time to fuck with them.
Yeah.
And then I went to that event and started painting, just put my head down, started painting, realized 6 hours had passed, and I was nearly done with them with the P-dot camouflage and all that shit, And I was like, damn, I really got a lot of work done. And I didn't think I was going to last that long because I get weird anxiety issues and stuff, and I'm like, I'm just going to go try and show up and see how long I can last before I freak out. And like 6 hours later, I'm like, I'm in this.
Which is weird because hanging around for John for an extended period of time really makes everybody kind of break out in a rash.
Yeah.
Now, some people blame the
about.
cats. I blame the mullet, but
I blame the cat. But no, I have some social anxiety issues as well, but
it's the hallmark of what we do.
It's
I mean that's who we are. But the simple fact of it is, and my wife brings this up all the time. It's completely different when you're in a place where you're amongst your peeps.
It's so
And
true.
this is like, and places like going to a Spoon meeting or coming to this convention, you're just surrounded by like-minded people, and you never feel judged. And I think that's sort of the crux of a lot of my anxiety, is that I feel judged over certain things, and here I never feel judged. So this is where I'm most relaxed.
There's a lot of people that know me outside of gaming that aren't gamers, and they know that I come here and do these, I sit for 8 hours a day in the dealer room talking to people, and they're like, how the hell do you do that? That's not you. And I'm like, when I'm here,
It's different.
It is me when I'm here. It's a
because you
whole-
can be you. You're comfortable being you.
Yeah.
And you don't feel any inhibitions. And
I go to some kind of wacky dinner party or whatever, and I'm not with my people.
Well, no, because everybody here, we have 2,400 people here this weekend, and every person here, you have at least one innate thing common to them is you enjoy this hobby in any way, shape, or form.
Yeah.
You know you at least have that in common, so you're going to find a common ground right away. Whereas in your dinner party
With normal people.
well, dude, I work in an office full of guys, and they know I take off. I'm gone for 5 days, weekend, plus I don't get Monday off at my job this weekend. But, I'm taking these days off. They know I'm going to be here. They really don't grasp what it is.
Yeah,
it's like,
really
it's like, oh, no. Yeah, seriously, I put these models together, I paint them, and they're like toys, and then I go and play with my friends in these army games that I did, every 7-year-old does, other than we use dice as our randomizers to say whether or not I actually did in fact shoot you.
I shot you. No, you didn't.
Yeah, exactly.
They just don't get it.
No, and they don't get it. And the nice thing is the people in my office don't. Okay, we're all weird, because honestly, it's no weirder than the guys who live fantasy football.
Absolutely not.
That's role playing.
Now, granted, speaking as a fantasy football player, but
the thing that I point out about sports fandoms, which I have no problem with, go Dolphins, is that it's you vicariously achieve.
Yeah,
with sports.
People, they identify with the team and they say, "We won this weekend."
Exactly.
Like, what position did you play?
But if I'm playing bolt action, those are my models that I assembled and painted. This is the army that I put together, and this is me tactically executing that army. This is all me.
So
if I win or lose, that's my pride, and it's all on me.
Yeah.
or it's the fact that we only had one anti-tank gun on the entire table.
Well, you know what? I think that was
that joke was for the guys at this table.
The scenario design fly.
We didn't even talk about last night's game where a 12-year-old killed us.
Well, to be fair though, scenario design, I love scenario design. So hopefully there'll be a whole podcast just on that.
We can do that. We can do that.
Yeah, that'd be great.
All right. Well, we tried to say goodbye like 15 minutes ago, so let's try it again.
Yeah, that's it.
I think we're done.
Ciao.
See you guys, and keep on gaming.
Yep.